Hey, this is Tom DeLonge, and you are listening to Blink 180 Dudes and Blink 180 Dudes Nudes.
Blink 180 Dudes.
You're on the phone with Tom DeLonge.
What are you wearing?
What are you wearing? I was going to ask you the same question, man.
Not much. I usually wear things that are unique and see-through. I'm wearing cellophane.
Oh, it sounds exotic.
I put a Ziploc baggie over myself with a rubber band, and that's all I need.
Just let the blood get pumping.
Yeah. So I heard you have a podcast that mentions some of the things I'm involved in.
Yeah, it's called the Blink 180 Dudes podcast. Talk all things Blink 182. So obviously you're a huge part of that. We talk Blink 182, Angels and Airwaves, and everything else that surrounds you guys. Because I'm sure, as you know, there's always a lot going on with Blink 182.
That's really awesome of you, man. Thank you so much for doing that. I've thought about podcasts. I just can't find the time these days, but I've been asked about that quite a lot. But it's so cool that someone's kind of already doing it. You probably do it better than I do it.
Well, that was actually probably one of the questions I would have had for you is, with your company and all, and podcasting being such a big part of media these days, if To the Stars has ever considered doing anything with podcasts.
I think we would. Do you want to do it or something? I need somebody.
Yeah,
I absolutely would.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, shit, you're already doing it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this is an amazing job interview for me so far.
Yeah, well, this is where I have to start. There is a casting couch. I just got to be honest. There is a way to the top.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
That would be a lot of fun is to listen to what you're doing and talk about that. But To the Stars does need a podcast, so I love that question. But yeah. So what are we talking about? Are we going to ask him questions, or he's asking me questions? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. So I guess Menance is just going to hand the reins over to me.
Yeah.
So no, one thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about. This is at the top of my list actually. I actually had the opportunity to talk to David a while ago, like 2013. You guys did win a guitar lesson with David Kennedy back then, and literally all I had to do was enter my email, and somehow I got lucky enough and won. So I talked to David I think we did a guitar lesson for like 5 minutes, and then we probably talked for just 45 minutes about like everything from Boxcar Racer to Angels and Airwaves. And one thing I mentioned to him, that Celtic Thief is probably my like all-time favorite Blink related song, especially obviously probably my favorite song that you've ever written and done. And it's funny because it's very unique. You have Travis on the drums there, but the drum is almost like a loop, and same with the guitar, and nothing's really that exotic with the music or anything, but it's so simple. And the lyrics though just hit me so great, and I've always kind of wondered what the song process was like, because did you write that with Tim Armstrong, and what the song itself is actually about?
Yeah. Okay. So Celtic Thief we're halfway into the Boxcar Racer record, and I remember wanting a song that was Travis on that album specifically started playing with loops. But the irony here is that he's such a good drummer that he didn't need to loop his drums to sound like a loop. He just plays them normally without any fills, and it sounds like a loop. So I can't remember if he actually looped those drums or not. But usually what he probably did though is he made a loop, and then he would do fills over it on a second track. The whole song would have started with just that main guitar riff and a melody that I would hum. And I like this idea of a childlike wonder, about a girl that you like, and you really don't want her, don't want her to leave the scope of opportunity that you might have with her. So I would lay out these lyrics. So first things first is I teach Travis the riff. Travis does his loop. Then I lay the tracks down. Then I sing it. And then we were talking about having guests on the record. And at the time he was doing transplants. So he said, "What about Tim?" I said, "Well, yeah, Tim's a god." And Tim shows up with all these lyrics kind of like scribbled on weird, trashy pieces of paper. And it was funny too, because I remember I said, "Wow, I go, Tim, those lyrics are great. They fit right in to the context of the song." And I remember he looked at me, he goes, "Oh," like he wasn't even like aware of what I was singing or anything. He just kind of did his thing. But after the fact, I remember listening to it. I'm like, it was such an amazing punk rock moment to have, Tim on there, because I was such a big Op Ivy fan. I was such a big Rancid fan. And who isn't, if you're into this kind of music. So for me, it was like it was a really big deal. And a lot of people really like that song. I appreciate you saying you like it as well. I've heard a lot about that particular song over the years, that it just is kind of one of the more standout ones. And it is very simple. I know when you called it simple, you didn't mean it like super simple. You meant it was complex and beautiful and artistic. That's what I got out of that's what I got out of your word simple. But
that just happened to me. I was getting I'm engaged, and I was getting a ring with my fiance, and my fiance said, "Oh yeah, I'm just looking for like something really simple." And then the person that we're buying it from was so offended by that.
Oh,
they're like, "Oh, you mean elegant?
You mean elegant? You mean expensive though, right?"
Yeah.
And it's actually funny. When I was talking to David, we were talking about just music in general, and he was saying sometimes with music, sometimes it isn't about always. Especially with Angels and Airwaves, you guys do a lot of layering and delay pedals and things like that. And he was kind of saying with songs like that, it's sometimes less is more, and sometimes taking things away and making that an element of the music and things like that. And so
with Angels and Airwaves, it's a lot. It's really easy to lay down track after track after track and build this symphony and wall of sound, and then you're like, oh, you kind of lose a bit of the spirit of the band. So it is better a lot of times to keep it really stripped down. Because then it lets the music, the instruments speak a little bit more in the track, and it doesn't separate yourself from being a rock band. Because if you write a rock and roll song, but you add in 30 tracks of synthesizers and stuff, next thing you know, it doesn't sound like a rock band anymore. So we're always very conscious of that. The new Angels and Airwaves record that's coming out is probably, it's going to be probably best record of my career, but it's definitely the best Angels record. And I think we found a really good place to live. That sounds like a rock and roll band, but has the soaring capabilities and that we've always had.
Yeah, and I kind of noticed that with the last EP you guys did with the Chasing Shadows, like a song like Overload. It's just, that seems like very straight. I feel like most of the EP, probably besides Chasing the track to Chasing Shadow itself, kind of sounded more like a stripped down version of Angels and Airwaves.
Yeah, it was, and on purpose. When I finished the double album and movie Love, I kind of realized that been beating a dead horse, like the same style of music. And David and I made a very conscious decision that it was time to change the sound of the band and throw everyone kind of throw them through a loop and take a left turn. And so we brought Alon in, and Dreamwalker was just that. It was such a change that it polarized some people, but to that point in my career, it was the most sophisticated record I ever made. And I think that's why we got the best of reviews. I mean, we're getting like 4 out of 5 stars in Rolling Stone, when my entire career, they would hate everything Blink ever did, Yeah. So on this record, we dialed it crazy back for Chasing Shadows. And then now this record is somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere between What Everyone Knows Me and Blinkland and What Everyone Knows Angels in those first few records. It's living right in the middle and much more melodic and anthemic than the Dreamwalker. So I'm really excited about it.
And so as I heard today on K-Rock, you have the 2020 release date for the new album. How far are you guys like actually in the writing process? Do you guys have a bunch of songs in the tank, or is there a mixture of both, where some songs are in the tank and there's some music that still needs to be written?
Yeah, well, we have about half the record done. Yes, so the way I planned this out was, it takes so long these days for a song to kind of do its thing on radio that it just makes sense to let one song out and let it grow in its own, because we haven't done that in so long. We just kind of serve our own fan base, and we wanted to expand the fan base on this record. So we gave a song, let it grow out there while we finished the record, and do half, which we did, and then I'm going to go on tour and make the movie. And then I come back after that and we'll score the movie, and that will influence the second half of the album. And then they'll both come out in time for next summer. And then that's the goal, is to have everything I've ever done come to life in that tour, which would be, it would be the animations of Poet Anderson. It would be the TV series on the History Channel. It would be the declassified UFO videos that I put out. It'll be, the feature film that I'm directing this fall. All of that media will start to come to life in the show. And this will be, what I've always said Angels and Airwaves was setting out to do 12 years ago, which is like a transmedia art project.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about on the podcast itself, with just, everything you've done. I mean, we talk about. I mean, we don't. Everything's speculation. We talk about you got so much going on, and you always have such a plan for everything. So it's always. I mean, we never really know what's going on until like out of nowhere, just we see on Instagram a post from Tom DeLonge, April 30th. ... And it's just like, oh shit. Like, do you know how much like power you have when you just send out a social like anything on Instagram? How much stuff you can rile up from the fans just by clicking a button?
I can't really tell because I really live on Instagram more than any other social network. So sometimes I put shit up there and I'm like, wait, no one cares? Like, come on. Maybe if I make it all caps.
No, it's the algorithm that they mess with so hard now.
It's I just can't tell. I do know though. It's funny. I went through a lot of my verified followers the other day on Twitter to get an idea of who's following it, and it's the first 50% of them were national security journalists, like Washington Post and Salon, The Hill, New York Times. Which gives you a little bit of a insight into the stuff I'm involved in is very serious and very real, and that's why they're following it. So it gives me I do understand when I looked at that. I think, wow, I got to be careful about what I say because a lot of people are listening now. I'm very used to being in Blink where like I put out a press release that I changed my name to Load Swallier.
Yeah, true.
Which I thought was the funniest thing ever at the time, But I didn't, and no one really cared. My band cared. Mark and Travis did not think that was funny at all. But but in any case, now it's like I got to be very, I gotta be. I have all these guys from the CIA and the Department of Defense that work for me or with me at my company, and they're all like, "You need to be more like Elon Musk," and I'm like, "Yeah, but." He's not a punker.
Yeah, true.
Wishes he was, but he's not.
I just wanted to say one last thing, a little business tip, if I might, for Tom, if he's open to it.
I could use it.
Yeah.
So I know, I mean, you're a businessman. I'm somewhat of a man, so I figure we might have something in common here. So I was thinking, here's a little ploy you can do to gain a little money for To the Stars and To the Stars Academy. Anytime you see a social media post where anyone mentions the phrase come back to Blink or are you coming back to Blink, they should have to pay you $1, and over time that'll accumulate to
I'll get millions the first day.
True.
That is
true.
I talk to Mark and Travis all the time. I mean, not all the time, but weekly I'm dealing with one of the dudes, and we all love each other.
More lately that
I mean,
people are ecstatic about everything, about the
like
relationship between
we're like
the three,
brothers that argue and but it's not really an argument. It's like if you look at everything I'm doing, there's no way I could do that if I was in the band, And
exactly, and you were kind of alluded to it this morning by saying that there was stuff you couldn't even mention before.
Oh, I couldn't tell him when I was dealing with all the people within government on the most classified, subject on earth and the most dangerous subject on earth. I was in a lot of sensitive waters and I couldn't commit to going into a studio and touring for the next couple of years. I was setting up a disclosure mechanism, which is going to change the world, and it's very much like someone goes, I have an idea for this thing called the internet. And everyone goes, you're crazy. Yeah. Computers aren't fast enough and it won't work. And someone really believes in it. And then they're trying to set it up and then they create Google,
Yeah.
And so that's really where I'm at right now, where, I see something that is world changing the way Sergey Brin probably saw it when he created, his little company that does search and it takes a lot of effort and that. But the problem is the internet, it wasn't this huge, mysterious, scary, classified subject. So it takes a lot of effort to do, because not only building a company, we are as a company actively involved in getting the Senate briefed and getting Congress briefed and changing national security law and really helping, push the ball down the field so everyone that's listening to this podcast will start to have a say over how we deal with this stuff. So it's just, there's so much to this that I could really use that $1 for every time they mention Go Back to Blink. That'd be great.
Tom, you are the fucking man. Thank you so much. And Menance, as always, thank you so much for everything.
We got you. You did great. Thank you.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you.